Good morning. Where are you from? All right, so I have 5 announcements to make before I begin, and the first announcement is this. I have been in the industry and spoken in your industry in a variety of different organizations. I've done research, so I have a fairly good idea of what you do. However, I don't know your personal set of circumstances. Even though I don't know your set of circumstances, what do you think that in the next 90 minutes, you can go ahead and start the clock. What do you think in the next 90 minutes that what you're going to experience in here about behavior can have a significant impact in your life? What do you think the chances are? High or low? What do you think? Let me hear it again. Actually, it's very low. It's very low that what you're going to experience is going to go any further than entertainment. Then you might ask, then why bother? Well, here's the why bother. Because it's possible. It's possible that what I share with you can have a significant impact. Is it likely? No. Is it possible? Yes. We're going for that possibility. So in order to give us a higher chance of having that as our probable outcome, high impact, I'm going to ask you to participate in a certain way. The first thing I'm going to ask you to do is to put blinders on and to imagine that I'm your coach, one-on-one coach, for the next hour and 29 minutes. I'm speaking to you individually. And I'm going to ask you to think about an area in your life where you want improvement. It can be health, business, personal, all 3. But blinders on, I'm talking to you one-on-one, area in your life where you want improvement. Now, I'm going to simplify, and there's only going to be one takeaway, one major takeaway. This one major takeaway is a behavioral dynamic that you didn't have when you walked in the room that you will have when you're done. It is this one behavioral dynamic that has a chance to be significant and have this great impact. And also, let me give you some recommendation about how you participate with this program. I'm going to ask you to participate without judgment. Now, here's what I mean by without judgment. If I were to say to you that there's an 80% correlation between being a decamillionaire and being in an exercise and fitness program, and you're not in an exercise and fitness program, observing that with judgment would be to say, I should be exercising. I'm not doing something that's highly correlated to a high degree of success. That's judgment. All I'd want you to do is observe that without judgment. Just observe, I'm not doing something that's highly correlated to a high degree of success. Versus I should be doing something. All right, so with me so far? All right, so those are my announcements. So let's begin. And I'd like to start by sharing an example that I have as a pilot. Any other pilots in the room? Oh, a few, okay. I'm a pilot. I fly Bonanza, which is a very nice high-performance single-engine aircraft. I'm going to tell you about the first time I was going to be in the clouds by myself without an instructor. I was flying from John Wayne Airport in Southern California over to an organization called Angel Flight in Santa Monica. Have you heard of Angel Flight? It's a national organization. The pilots volunteer their time and expenses for medical transportation. It was forecast to be a 1,000-foot ceiling. What this means is at 1,000 feet, 100% of the sky is covered with clouds. I was going to be in the clouds. This is going to be my first time in the clouds by myself without an instructor. I was bringing my marketing person with me, and I told my marketing person, I'm going to be a little bit busy on this trip. I won't be able to talk to you much. The translation is, this is my first time in the clouds by myself. Good luck. I get to the airport. It's a cloudy day. All of a sudden, the ground control clears me to taxi and hold short of the active runway. I'm holding short, and the tower calls my aircraft, Bonanza 9198 Quebec. I'm hoping they're going to say, we're too busy for small aircraft on this instrument day. Turn around and go back. What did they say? Cleared for takeoff. So I get center line, I get full power, I'm at liftoff speed, I pull back, I get the wheels up, make some adjustments, gaining altitude 500, getting hazy 800. At 1,000 feet, it's like someone put a blanket over my eyes at 1,000 feet. This is what it looks like. Let's take a closer look right in there. This is it. This is what I see at 1,000 feet. And I want to tell you that I was absolutely terrified. I was so afraid that my legs were shaking like this hysterically on the rudder pedals. I didn't dare look at my passenger because I didn't want to see what my passenger looked like, looking at the pilot freaking out. And I remember my thinking was, I'm either going to do this or I'm going to die. And this wasn't much long after JFK Jr. had died in his aircraft accident. Do you remember that? Over 80% of small aircraft accidents are what's called VFR and IMC. VFR stands for Visual Flight Rules. The weather deteriorates. IMC means Instrument Meteorological Condition. Here's what the problem is. When I have no visual reference, can I have that same slide, Terry, again? When I have no visual reference, I can't tell what the aircraft is doing, and I can't trust myself to interpret what my senses are telling me. Let me give you an example of how easy it is to deceive human senses. Take a look at this. What would you say the distance is from the ground to that wingtip? Go ahead and shout out the number that comes to you. What do you think the distance is? 12 feet, 8 feet, something like that. Now, here's what you want to keep in mind. What you were in reference to be able to give that judgment, what you're in reference to is your image of a small airplane. So your brain has what's called a schemata, which is a collection, a neural network that has your image of a small aircraft. Now, watch what happens when all I do is change what you're in reference to. Watch how your entire interpretation dramatically changes. How about now? That arrow is the same size as that arrow. Now, of course, your entire interpretation changes, but what never changed was the fact. What never changed was that airplane. What changed was your observation. What changed was what you paid attention to, and that's going to be important when we talk about that one behavioral dynamic that I have for you. Let me give you some other examples of how limited human senses really are. So how about this? Are these lines parallel, or do they slope up and down? Well, what's it look like? Look at the second line from the top. Doesn't that look like an upward slope to you? Well, we can't trust our interpretation in reference to black and white squares. Let's change your reference point. The way that we do that is draw a straight edge. When you draw a straight edge, you can see that line's not sloping at all. The black and white squares deceives our perception. How about 2 down from that? Wouldn't you look at that and think that that's a downward slope? Nod your head if you agree. Does that look like a downward slope? Well, we can't trust our interpretation to the black and white squares. Let's change what we're in reference to, a straight edge. In fact, they are all straight parallel lines. Now, here's my favorite. Is square A darker than square B? When you look at that, what would you say? Is square A darker than square B? You would say yes. So I look at this and I say, I don't know what you're getting at. Square A is obviously darker than square B. How many of you would put $100 that square A is darker than square B? Let me see the hands. Who would put $100? Would you get that $100 out? Because you would lose that. They are identical. Now, you see, you look at this and you say, what are you talking about? They're identical. They're not identical. Square A is darker than square B. It's right in front of my eyes. You can't trust your interpretation of your senses because they are identical. But here's what the key is. A is surrounded by white space. A is in reference to white space. B is surrounded by dark shaded space. B is in reference to dark. And that gives it that lighter appearance. So what I did was I took the same copy and I cut out square B. I put it right on top of this copy and I videotaped myself moving it up on top of square A. And when I move it, it looks like it's changing colors right in front of your eyes. It's never changing colors. I'm only changing what it's in reference to. Watch this short video. Can you move that hand off the screen, by the way? Thank you, Terry. It looks like it changes colors right in front of your eyes. Is that crazy? It's never changing colors. It's always the same. It's just what it's in reference to. I hope that you can see, and by the way, send me an email and I'll send you a copy of this and you can win something by challenging somebody with this. But anyway, and so count the black dots. Any problem there? An issue doing that? Do we have some limited human perception? So when I'm in the clouds like this, and thank you, Terry, when I'm in the clouds like this, I can't trust my perception. And I'm freaking out, scared to death. And then I started to think, I'm either going to do this or I'm going to die. And I further started to think, I've been in worse weather than this with an instructor, and I've flown the plane. Imagine that my passenger was a flight instructor. What kind of a conversation would I be having? My flight instructor would be saying, stay on your system of instruments. This is what's going to save my life. These are my instruments right there. I'm going to focus on one. That's called an attitude indicator. It's a gyroscope, which means rigidity in space. Just by looking at this one instrument, I can tell what the aircraft is doing. It's blue to the top, brown to the bottom, and there's a miniature airplane right in the center. I'll highlight that for you. And if I look at this and if I see this, I'm in a climbing left turn. I had better want to be in a climbing left turn. Even if I might feel like I'm straight and level, if I see this, I'm in a climbing left turn. And so staying focused on my instruments, I gain confidence in the flight. And then one of the most beautiful things to happen to any pilot, particularly from being in the clouds, is when you break out of the clouds and right in front of you is the airport that you intended to go to. I don't take this lightly, even on a clear day, believe me. Now, the reason that I start off by sharing this with you is because I have a system that has a high probability of a predicted result. If I follow the system, I can pretty much almost guarantee it's a high probability that I will have this result. So my question for you is, where's the system for behavior in business? Where's the system and behavior for you to run yourself so that you're peak performance most of the time? It doesn't exist. It's amazing. So what you're going to experience today is a system for elite performance. And this system will result in 3 words. Those words are peace of mind. How many of you could use some help with peace of mind by raise of hands? What goes into having peace of mind? In my opinion, there's 3 areas of our life that need to be fulfilled, all 3 areas. If one of these areas is not fulfilled, you're not going to have peace of mind. First area of application of what you experience, and by the way, my breakout session, I think it's 3:30 in the afternoon, is going to implement what you're experiencing today. First area of application would have to be in your health. If you're not in good health, you're not going to have peace of mind. If you don't have energy, you're not going to have peace of mind. So that's the first area to apply. Second area of application would have to be in your personal life. If you're in a struggling relationship, you're not going to have peace of mind. How many of you, by raise of hands, are in a rotten relationship right now? Let's see the hands. How many of you are in a rotten relationship, but you just can't raise your hand right now? Anybody in that category? I happen to be very blessed. I've been in a wonderful, loving marriage for 10 years, 13 total. And and so the second area of application would have to be in your personal life. And then the third area of application would have to be in your business, in your finances. Those are the 3 areas of application: your business, your health, and your personal life. Let me just ask, how many of you are at least interested in improving the results in one of those areas? How about interested in making more money? Is it unanimous in the room? I want you to remember there's an hour and 18 minutes left in this presentation. I want you to remember that at an hour and 18 minutes, you raised your hand and you said that you had an area in your life that you wanted to have improvement. Would you remember that? All right, so who would you say your biggest competitor is to reaching your goals? Who's your biggest competitor? Is it a competing company in the same private duty space that you're in? Is it the economy? Is it the area of the country that you live in? Is it pending legislation? Is it disclosure? Is it world events? Is it the weather? Who would you say your biggest competitor is to reaching your goals? That's right. Somebody said it. You are your biggest competitor. Now, this program has 2 parts. The first part is to take a look at what does it mean to say, I am my biggest competitor? And then the second part, once we look at that, the second part is, all right, so here's what that means. Now, how do I compete with myself? So are you ready to get to work? Everybody with me so far? Blinders on? You have that area? So let's get to work. What I want to do is I want to talk about human nature. And here is a very strong statement that I want to make. You have far more capacity to create the circumstances and events in your life than you are aware of. I'll say it again. You have far more capacity to create the circumstances and events in your life than you are aware of. And let's dig into how we are as human beings. The way that you think affects how you feel, and that affects what you do. Let me say it a different way. The perception that you have affects your physiology, and that affects your actions. Let me say it a third way. You and I are going to resist doing activities that we don't feel like doing. For example, if you don't feel like getting up at 3:50 in the morning and exercising, you're not going to do it. If you don't feel like staying on a precise food plan, you're not going to do it. If you don't feel like being up to date in the latest technology, you're not going to do it. If you don't feel like spending time with your family, you're not going to do it. Basically, our first point says you and I are going to resist doing activities that we don't feel like doing. How many of you would agree with that by raising your hands? See, not all of you raise your hand. If you don't feel like raising your hand, you're not going to do it. Now, blinders on. I made a statement to you. Blinders on, talking to you. I made a statement that you have far more capacity to create the circumstances and events in your life than you are aware of. and I'm going to give you some information that'll help you be more powerful in reaching your goals. However, the first issue that we have is human nature says you're going to resist doing things you don't feel like doing. Now, let me give you some good news. I don't need to give you something new in this presentation. You already have that capacity for great achievement. What I need to give you is access to it. And the way that I give you access to this is by influencing how you think. So, since perception, think, feel, and act. Now, many times there's trainers in the room. Trainers come up to me all the time and they say, we know exactly what you're talking about. We know how to train our people to do what they need to do. If they would just do what we train them to do, they'd be all more successful. We agree with your first point. So I thank the trainers for their agreement. Then I ask this question: what do you turn to enhance the results of your training? The most common response that I get back is goal setting. How do you feel about goal setting? How many of you believe that goal setting works? By raising hands. Believers in goal setting? Let me see the hands. All right, let's keep this confidential. Keep this in the room. Goal setting doesn't work. Let me give you a disclaimer in case there's any regulators in the room. Goal setting is a part of my recommendation, but not by itself. If all you did is set goals, here's what you're going to see. On the top line, these are your goals. This is your business plan. This is what you want to accomplish. There's another word that goes in this line. I just cringe when I hear the word. The word is potential. The reason that I cringe when I hear the word potential is because what you're capable of doing really doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the bottom line, your actual performance. Can we talk about this? Have you ever said that you're going to do something that you wanted to do and you didn't do it? Nod your head up and down if that applies to you. All right, why does that happen? Let's look at a dynamic here, and I'm going to go outside of your industry, then we'll go into your industry. I was doing my program for a mortgage company in 1986 when the interest rate on a 30-year fix was at 8.5%. Let's go back in time. In 1982, the interest rate was 16.09%. How many of you remember that marketplace? You remember that marketplace? Here's a graph that will bring back the memories. In 1984, the interest rate had dipped down to about 13%. And in 1986, it was hovering around 10%. One point in time, it dipped down to 8.5%. Now, 16%, a couple of years, 8.5%. This company put an ad in the newspaper for refis, and the phone was ringing off the hook. The lenders, who were independent contractors, commission-only salespeople, were coming into the office, sitting at their desk, and answering all the market-driven refi business, and they were busy. The management saw how they were doing their business and got very nervous and called a meeting. In a meeting, they said, we've got a problem here. You need to realize that we live in a cyclical marketplace, and yes, the interest rates are nice and low right now, but what's the next trend? They're going to go up. Look at the ratio of all the business in your pipeline. It's all market-sensitive, refi business. That's going to dry up. So in addition to handling all of the market-driven refi business, you also need to go out there and prospect for purchase business. And the lenders said, that's right, we do. And the lenders said that they would go and talk to 20 new people this week that could give them purchase business. They said that they were going to do this. They intended to do it. They were motivated to do it. They wanted to do it, and they didn't do it. Why didn't the lenders do the prospecting that they said they were going to do? Let's ask the lenders, why didn't you prospect? Here's what they said. I was going to, but I was just too, what's the word? Just too busy. Now, remember I said you can't trust your interpretation of what's going on. Is A darker than B? Are these lines straight? You can't trust your interpretation. The lenders were in reference to all of their priorities. Let me show you how it would look through their eyes, because they were motivated and they wanted to go prospect. So the lender goes into the office. They're all set to prospect. The owner of the company comes over and says, there's a problem on one of your deals. It's a buy down. The borrower is moving from a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in an older, to a 2-bedroom, 1-bath in an older, more beat-up area. I don't think we can sell this loan on the secondary market as an owner-occupied. You need to verify it's going to be owner-occupied. Now, the content of this example isn't what's important. What's important is, what's the lender paying attention to? The mindset. And the lender is thinking, I know I said I'm going to prospect, but I can't be worried about the possibility of new business when I have a problem in existing business. This is a priority. I am going to prospect, but I have to handle this priority first. So they handle this. They do intend to prospect. They're all set to go prospect. Something else comes up. There's a crack in the driveway and in the foundation on this property. They need to get a geology report. That stops them. They got to handle that. They turn around from there. This borrower just forgot to mention a bankruptcy. They have to see if they can salvage this deal. Over here, underwriting wants bank statements on this borrower. They don't want to get bank statements because it shows declining income. They have to see if they can salvage this deal. One priority after another, after another, after another. And before you know it, they believed that the truth was they were just too busy. They believe that that's the truth. Let's look at your circumstances, your industry. You have goals. So you're going to have gross revenue goals. Now, I know there's a wide range between what your gross revenue is going to be. A smaller organization, maybe $1 million. A larger organization, $7 million plus. But so everybody in a room has a target of what you're going to accomplish or want to accomplish this year. And gross profit margin, you're going to have pay rate. You're going to have those ratios. You're going to hours per week per caregiver. You're going to have metrics, call conversion ratios, family meetings turns into cases. You're going to have all the metrics of what you're going to measure so that you can answer the question, how would you know if you had a great year or not in 2014? And also you're going to have activities, prospecting, database management, in-person sales calls to your referral sources. You're going to have in-home consultations. You're going to have managing account receivables, managing payroll. You're going to have alliance. One of the things that I share with people is forming alliances with other entities that service the geriatric population. So perhaps you'll form some alliances that have educational events as a result of that. Hire, train, build your team. You say you're going to do these things. You intend to do these things. You're motivated to do these things. And then you have some priorities. And of course, in my research, the two most important would be your in-person sales calls and your in-home consultations. Would you agree with that? So you say you're going to do these things, and then all of a sudden, you get busy. All of a sudden, the caregiver, there's some drama that your office hasn't handled that you need to get involved with. Something about the family of the in-home, and you got some issues with that. You turn around from there. You plan to do your own visits. You plan to do your prospecting, but a vendor calls regarding a referral list, so you need to take that. You handle that. You're all set to do your, let's just call it prospecting and marketing, and then all of a sudden, emergency happens with one of your cases. Somebody gets hurt and injured. You turn around from there, and you need to research a hospital's website. It's a huge hospital, and you want to know what you're doing and who you're looking to speak with when you go in there, so you need to do some research. You turn around from there, you're all set to prospect. A caregiver's child is sick. You need to get that schedule. A problem with a check and payroll, you need to handle that. You turn around from there, software migration, newer version of HomeTrack. Now it's ClearCare. You've got an issue navigating, finding something. You have to call corporate to the helpless desk. You turn around from there. Now things get better. You get an email from Nigeria that somebody needs your help bringing $15 million into the United States. You get to keep it all. It's just going to cost you $5,000 to bring it all over. Life doesn't get any better than that. And you believe that the truth was you were just too busy. How many of you can identify with this in your own set of circumstances? Now, thank you. I know it looks like that's the truth of what's happening in your circumstances. However, remember, I'm saying that being in reference to all of what I just explained is not a peak performance state. You can't trust your interpretation of what you're experiencing. Let me show you again an example of the truth. I show you my hands are empty. I snap a finger, make a fist, and pull out a scarf. See how that works? Just fine, right? I'm going to make it disappear. Make a fist, tuck it into my fist. It's not going in my ring. It's not going in my sleeves. It's going, and you can see that the scarf disappears. And it's not here, and on 3, 1, 2, 3, it's disappeared. Right now, what you're probably saying is, what a talented individual. I'm going to show you how I did this only under one condition. It's a standard magician's trick. If it gets out that I showed you this, they'll make my card disappear. You have to promise to keep this confidential. Will you keep this confidential? Yeah, it'll be on a corporate website by the time I get back to California. Now, raise your hand if the truth for you is that you see empty hands. Go ahead and raise your hands if you see empty hands. You can't trust your interpretation. I know it looks like my hands are empty. I know it looks like you're just too busy. You can't trust your interpretation. My hands are not empty. I'm wearing what's called a Vernet thumb tip. Inside of the thumb tip is this scarf. This is how this works. On sale at my booth for $10. Includes the scarf. And I do have these. So if you come by and you get one of these and you go back and you show your colleagues, they say, well, what did you learn at the conference? Watch this. Just make sure you're careful when you do this, because this is a dead giveaway. My hands are empty. What's that? Now, I'm about ready to make a major point. I show you my hands are empty this time, and what's the only thing you see? Sticks out like a sore thumb. Now, the point is, I was wearing this every time. You didn't see it the first time, but you do the second. What's that tell you about reality? Reality isn't what's different. What's different is you are. What you're paying attention to is what's different. So it's not about the marketplace. It's not about external circumstances. It's about you. Now, since perception is the key, let's see how perceptions are formed. What is this line, concave or convex? I'm glad nobody's shouting out. You have to take a stand. You have to be in reference to left or right. So let's take the reference from the left side. Now, from A's perspective, now what is that line, concave or convex? Now you need to know the difference between concave and convex, right? And so here's how a perception is formed. What you do is you look at the facts. The line is bending towards me at the top, it's bending towards me at the bottom, it's bowing away from me in the center. That's the definition of a concave line. So what you did before to form a belief is that you gathered evidence from the facts. I started off by saying this comment to you that you have far more capacity to create the circumstances and events in your life than you are aware of. And what happened was, subconsciously, you went back into your series of experiences and you have certain beliefs about yourself, don't you? You have beliefs about what you're capable of earning. You have beliefs about your health. You have beliefs about your personal circumstances, your relationships. And when I say that you have far more capacity to create the circumstances and events in your life, what happens for you is you resist that. Not good or bad, no judgment, but you resist it. Now, let's say that I go to A and I say this is a convex line. Let me show you what I'm up against. A has all the evidence that proves the other point of view. Let's say A is open-minded, willing to re-examine the evidence. So A looks and says, well, it's bending towards me at the top, towards me at the bottom, away from me in the center. I'm sorry, you're wrong. This is a concave line. And so A believes that the absolute truth is that this is a concave line. But what about B? B does the same thing. B looks at the same facts, but a different perspective, a different reference. For B, it's bending away from B at the top, it's bending away from B at the bottom, bowing towards B in the center. That's the definition of a convex line. So what is the truth? Is this concave or is it convex? What's the truth? Would you write this down about the truth? On the bottom of page 2, see your notes? The bottom of page 2, would you write this down about the truth? The truth is not relevant, or the truth doesn't matter. The truth is not the issue. The issue is, does what I'm paying attention to support me in taking the actions that I need to take to reach my goals? That's the only thing that matters. Now, I take pride in a couple things about my presentation. First of all, my program is based on laws of science. And this is from my undergraduate. My background was as a college football coach, and my undergraduate at Springfield, my undergraduate was Rutgers University, my graduate at Springfield College, very research-oriented. When I came out to California, I researched a Nobel Prize winner at Caltech. And then when I went to Cal State Fullerton as an assistant football coach, I already had a scientific model to apply to getting peak performance. And this is one of the world-known neurobiology professors, Larry Cahill. This is a picture of a goat brain, and that's a human brain. But my program is based on laws of science. And the other part that I'm proud of is my program is based on best practices of elite performers. So you combine that with scientific principles, you really have something that can have an impact. Elite performers don't always wake up in the morning thinking, what a great day it is to be alive. Sometimes they wake up, they're kind of aggravated. How many of you have ever been aggravated by a raise of hands? Sometimes they wake up, they're kind of whiny. How many of you ever whined? Can I see the hands? Oh, a lot of non-whiners. That's really nice to see. When their thinking doesn't support them in taking the actions that they need to take to reach their goals, they take an opposite point of view. I call that flipping. And it's also referred to as the stop technique. Here's how it works. I stand in front of you and I say, health is my number one value. You don't know that because I say so. You would only know that based on what I do. Look at what I wrote down the side of the first page. What you do speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you say, by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And so I say that I'm going to get up at 3:50 in the morning. I'm going to exercise. I am motivated to do it. I intend to do it. I set the alarm for 3:50. The alarm rings at 3:50. Do I get up and go to the gym? It depends on which side I'm paying attention to. Same slide again, Terry, please. Which side am I paying attention to, the A side or the B side? Thank you. If I'm on the A side, I might be thinking something like this. I'm tired. My back hurts. The last time I worked out through a pain in my back went out. Listen to this. I've worked out 18 of the last 21 days. Equally as important in a fitness program is rest. I need to sleep in. Now, that might be absolutely true. What did you just write down about the truth? What did you write down? It doesn't matter. If that's what I'm paying attention to, I am not getting up and going to the gym. So here's the stop technique, the flip technique. I catch myself whining, I stop, same slide again, Terry, I stop and I flip over to an opposite point of view. 100% of the time, I have a better day when I started off with a workout. Thank you. I go downstairs where my workout gear is, and I'm whining, it's cold, I'm tired, stop, flip. 100% of the time, I have a better day when I started off with a workout, all the way to the gym if I need to. If I just stopped and flipped to a thought that compelled the action, I would take the action, and so would you. If I stopped right here and the takeaway was the stop technique, you could possibly get yourself to do things that right now you're not doing. It would be fabulous, except for one problem. You won't do this. You won't use it. How do I know you won't use this? Because it requires too much energy in the outer part of the brain called the cortex. This 3-pound organ, which takes up 20% of the body's resources, it's only 2% of the body volume. This 3-pound organ is an energy conservation organ. Our genetic coding, our design from evolution is to conserve energy so that we can take the most amount of energy necessary and see our threats to survival. So anything that your brain can find a shortcut to, it's going to stop. And this stop technique requires way too much energy. Your brain's not going to let you use this. So let me give you an example of your brain being hijacked because it's too energy intensive. Are you ready to take our first test this morning? Nod your head up and down if that's a yes. All right, here's the first test. Dennis is looking at Jody. Jody is looking at Mark. Dennis is married. Mark is not. Is a married person looking at an unmarried person? Your choices are yes, no, or not enough information, you can't determine it. So the question is a married person looking at an unmarried person? Dennis is married looking at Jody. Jody is looking at Mark. Mark is not married. What's the answer? What would you say? Nice and loud, what's the answer? All right, so I think I heard more C's. Raise your hand nice and high if you said C. All right, so 2/3 of the room. What information do you think you're missing that will prevent you from answering this? Whether Jody's married. Okay, so raise your hand again if you said C, and I want you to repeat after me. My brain, nice and loud, my brain was just hijacked. The answer is yes, a married person is looking at an unmarried person, but look at what your brain did. Your brain, the question is a married person looking at an unmarried person, and your brain said, I don't know, it depends on what Jody is, and your brain recognized a pattern and stopped you from putting additional energy into this problem because you recognize the pattern. The reality is, it doesn't make a difference whether Jody's married or not. Jody can either be married or unmarried. Let's take the first one. Jody's married. Dennis is married, looking at Jody, who's married. That doesn't meet the criteria of a married person looking at an unmarried person. However, in this case, Jody is married, looking at Mark, who's not married. Yes, if Jody's married, a married person is looking at an unmarried person. Let's say Jody is unmarried. Dennis is married, looking at Jody, who is not married, then yes. If Jody's unmarried, a married person is also looking at an unmarried person. Again, your brain was just hijacked. Now, the question is, where else is that happening? Where else is your brain recognizing a pattern and stopping you from putting more energy into that? How about everywhere? So, what do you see there? What's the geometry there? Another example. There, you see a triangle? What triangle? I see 3 Pac-Men. But again, energy conservation, your brain sees a pattern, recognizes a pattern. That recognition stops the expenditure of energy. So if you use this, it would be significant. Good luck getting yourself to use it, at least consistently. Now, since perception is the key, I have a master's degree in psychology. What that means is I spend a lot of time teaching rats to press down levers to get food. That's always been a lot of fun. I want to take you into a laboratory. I'm going to show you a laboratory experiment that'll help me really put the foundation for that one behavioral dynamic. So here we go into the laboratory. What we have on page 2, you'll see this, we have a wooden behavioral box, and in the center we have a volunteer rat. This volunteer rat is very hungry. It has not been fed in 3 weeks. This rat wants food. There's food to the right, there's rags to the left. We open up the gates, the rat sees the food, the rat runs up to where the food is. Psychologists look at this and they say a phenomenon has occurred. I'm stumped by this. How in the world is this a phenomenon? The rat's hungry, the food's to the right, it runs to the right where the food is. But you know how psychologists are. How many of you by raise of hands are in therapy right now? Let's see the hands. How many of you should be in therapy? Let's see those hands. Well, don't take any notes on this. Here's what it's called. It's called the desire-driven phenomenon. And here's what it means. When the focus is on the goal, the activities necessary to achieve the goal will occur. So, same slide again, Terry. So the rat's focus on the food, the activity necessary is to run up to the right. That's exactly what it does. Thank you. And this theory goes on to further say that in the absence of any obstacles, the organism will focus on the desired outcome. Let me say it again. In the absence of any obstacles, the organism will focus on the goal. So this is where I have a problem with this. In the absence of any obstacles. We all have obstacles. How many of you had an obstacle to overcome just to come to this conference? Can I see the hands? How many of you are sitting next to an obstacle? Can I see those hands? All right, so let's see if we can make this more relevant to us. Let's put an obstacle in the way. Here's what we do. Take the rat, put it back in the center, close it off. This time we line the floor with a metal grid. The metal grid isn't the obstacle. The obstacle is the shock, the voltage that we put on the metal grid. It's called a shock grid. Here's what it looks like. That's exactly what our volunteer, this is what the metal grid looks like. That's exactly what our volunteer rat looks like. And one more thing. We have a device on the skull of the rat that enables us to see in real time how its brain is firing. So here we go. We open up the gates. The rat sees the metal grid. Does the rat know that there's a shock on the metal grid? No, it doesn't. So what does the rat pay attention to? That's my key phrase. What's the rat in reference to? The rat's in reference to a previous experience when it ran up that metal grid and there was the food that it wanted. So the rat pays attention to the food. It starts up to reach its goal. It gets a tremendous shock. Instinctively, it runs away over to the nice, soft, comfortable rags. Now I mention a word that I need to spend some time on. Let's put the blinders on. I'm talking to you one-on-one about an area in your life that you want to improve. You have an instinct referred to as the survival mechanism. The survival mechanism is the part of your brain that recognizes danger and compels the avoidance of the activity that it recognizes as dangerous. Now, remember that we had a device on the skull of the rat. What we see is the actual brain scan of how the brain was firing. And I'm going to talk to you about that in a second. But first, let's talk about the human brain. The human brain has about 100 billion neurons, each individual neuron capable of tens of thousands of interactions. The human brain is said, now this is not scientific, but I heard this. The human brain is said to be more complicated than a Donald Trump hair comb over. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I heard. I want to give you an analogy of the human brain, and this will ask for your participation. So before I ask you to participate in this analogy, let me see how well you can follow directions. Both hands straight in front of you, palms facing each other. Go ahead and do that. Roll so that the back of your hands are facing each other. Take your left hand and put it over your right, and interlock your fingers so that your left thumb is over your right. And now move your fingers, move your pinky, move your thumb, and left thumb over the right. Watch this. Left thumb over the right. Okay, so everybody have that. Now, on 3, do this with me. 1, 2, 3, and do this. Go ahead. A little difficulty there? Okay, well, I'll slow it down a bit. All right, so here we go. Both hands fully extended. Make a fist with both hands. Put your knuckles of your hands together so that the heels of your hands are touching. Roll it up and take a look at the top. That represents the cortex, the outer cortex area of the brain. That's the area of the brain that thinks. That's the decision-making. That's the inhibiting area of the brain, your rationalizing area of the brain. And if you open it up and you look at your fingers that are buried deep within the brain, that represents the limbic area. Notice that it's mirrored on both sides. The limbic area of the brain. Close it back up again, and the wrist represents the brain stem. So those are the three different areas. The limbic area of the brain is your emotional area of the brain. Roll it back up and look at the top of that again, the outer cortex. That's about the size of your outer brain's cortex. You look at that and you say, well, that's pretty small. Actually, the surface area of the brain is about this big as an analogy. But if the skull had to be big enough to house a brain this big, I can only imagine that childbirth would be worse than it already is. And so what happens, and this is particular to the human species, is the brain folds over on itself. And so the analogy is this: the brain folds over so you get a large surface area in a small volume. That's what's going on with the human brain. And so the areas of the brain that I have previously mentioned, the outer cortex, this is your thinking, your planning, your decision-making. The limbic area of the brain, your emotional area of the brain. And then the brain stem is your autonomic nervous system, breathing, heart rate, and so forth. And so let's look here at what we see. This time we open up the gates. First thing that we see is a shot to the outer cortex. The rat is actually looking at the food. When the rat steps on the metal grid, it gets this tremendous shot. We see a different area of the brain that's triggered, and that's the limbic area of the brain. We get what's called a cortical limbic loop, where we see exactly how the rat's brain is operating when the rat is in a state of high pain and avoidance. So here's how the brain operates in high pain and avoidance behavior for the rat. That's going to be important in just a few minutes. Now, let's talk a bit about human instincts. What I want to share with you is the first human instinct of fight or flight. Imagine you're hiking in the woods with your friend, and all of a sudden you see a bear. How fast do you need to be? Faster than your friend? Am I hearing that? So you see a bear, and here's what happens. Non-conscious response. The heart rate increases, breathing increases, the blood leaves the extremities into the major muscle groups. So if you're clogged, you're not going to bleed to death. You get a shot of epinephrine, shot of cortisol. You get a shot of adrenaline. You've got this physiology where you can stand and fight as strong as you can possibly be, or run as fast as you can run, and that the ability to non-consciously generate this physiology saves lives. The fight or flight response. So here's a caveman out in the woods, it looks up, sees a mountain lion. This caveman says, oh, pretty kitty. That caveman gets killed. Doesn't live to pass on the stupid gene. Although, how many of you have family reunions that would dispute that? Anybody? This caveman looks up, sees a mountain lion. He's already in a sprint. He's 50 yards into a sprint before he's aware, before he's conscious. This is a non-conscious response. The ability to, and this gets passed on, the ability to recognize non-consciously. The non-conscious mind is 400 times faster than the conscious mind. He doesn't have to do anything to generate this response. That favors survival. And here's an example of that. What do you see? You see a dog. That's a non-conscious response. Your brain is designed to recognize a pattern. This is an example of cognitive misery, seeing patterns, right? And so this favors survival. And let me give you a tough biological question. This is not a Bob+Davies opinion. This is a biological question. What is the purpose of your life? Now, before you say world peace, love, leave a legacy, the purpose from a biological perspective of your life is to pass on your genes. And so any adaptation that we have genetically in our DNA that favors survival is passed on. And so that's why we are the way that we are today. The ability to recognize instantly a threat and avoid it favors survival. Now, here's the problem, though. It doesn't only work when it's appropriate. These instincts trigger anytime they're triggered, whether it's appropriate or not. For example, you're in your car, somebody cuts you off, and they give you the finger. All of a sudden, your heart rate increases, your breathing increases, you get a shot of cortisol, a shot of adrenaline, the blood leaves the extremities into the major muscle group. You get this physiology, but you're sitting in your car. It's an inappropriate response. We are genetically coded to thrive in a world that no longer exists. Here's another example of a genetic instinct that doesn't serve us, but it has the history of favoring survival. The apostat area of the brain is the part of the brain that recognizes when you've had enough intake, caloric intake, and it signals the fat cells to release a hormone called leptin. When leptin is in your bloodstream, you feel satisfied and you stop eating. There is a delay in the release of leptin. Why is that? Caveman captures a deer. It must be because it favors survival. Caveman captures a deer. It might be another week before he has a food source like that. It favors survival for caveman to be able to binge because of food scarcity. Now, is that appropriate for us today? Do we have food scarcity today? No, we don't. But we still have the delayed response. Another example of an instinct that doesn't serve us anymore. So let me give you some notes. Let's take some notes about the survival mechanism. Bottom of page 2, blinders on. You have an area of your life that you want improvement. You have this instinct called the survival mechanism. The survival mechanism overrides, here's what we're up against. You have an instinct that overrides what you need to do to reach your goal. Because the brain searches like a computer, finds its link to pain, overrides your desire to take the action, and compels you to avoid. Now here's the last thing that we're going to do with this scientific experiment with the volunteer rat. We're going to leave the middle grid, but this time we're going to remove the shock. Look at do I have some words in the circle or squared right outside of this? Reality versus perception, is that in your notes? What's the truth this time? We took the shock away. Is there anything in reality stopping the rat from reaching its goal? What's the answer? No, there's nothing stopping. The truth is the rat can easily have its food and do what it needs to do. However, when we open up the gates, what's the rat going to be paying attention to? When we open up the gate this time, here's what we get from the rat's perspective. Right there. That's it. That's what we get. Now, that doesn't mean why the face. It doesn't mean where's the food. What it means is where's the focus? Is the focus on the opportunity and the goals and the targets, or is the focus on the obstacles, what's in the way, the reason that he can't? That's my question for you. Where's your focus? Is your focus on the opportunities to take the actions you need to take to reach your goals, or is the focus on the reasons why you can't? Let me ask you this question. Do dogs love bones? What would you say? Well, no, they don't. They love meat. They settle for bones. So the tough love question for you, remember, no judgment, the tough love question for you is, where are you settling? Where are you living in resignation, believing that you're doing the best that you can be doing? And remember that my contradictory comment is, you have far more capacity to create the circumstances and events in your life than you're aware of. All right, you with me so far? Nobody's mad at me? All right, so let's continue. When we open up the gate, same slide there, Terry, when we open up the gates this time, what does the rat do? The rat will not go over that middle grid. The rat will remember instantly the tremendous shock that it had last time. It will avoid. But here's the real clincher. We get the exact same brain scan as when the rat was in physical pain and avoiding. This is a very favorable adaptation, genetic adaptation. The ability to recognize a memory, a previous experience of a life threat, so that you don't have to re-experience it again. You can recognize it and avoid it. The rat gets the same brain scan that it had when it was physically in shock. I've just described post-traumatic stress, reliving the experience as if it's real. It's a survival adaptation. And so this is also referred to as the science of learned helplessness. Now let's look at this for common application. As you are aware of, we have an epidemic of obesity. Why is it so difficult for millions around the world to lose weight and keep it off? Is it because they don't know what to do? That information is readily available, your diet and exercise. I had one guy tell me he's on 2 diets at the same time. I said, really, why is that? He said, there's more food that way. That is absolutely correct, isn't it? I like that. The reason it's so difficult, same slide please, the reason it's so difficult is because the activity of dieting is linked to pain. The activity of exercise is linked to pain. I know you intend to have the weight managed. I know you intend to have the results, but when your brain, here's a phrase, write this phrase down if you would please, instincts trump intentions. Instincts trump intentions. When your brain has the instinct of recognizing an activity that's dangerous, it will override your intention. It will compel you to avoid. In sales, what is the biggest challenge for people in sales? Well, it's not seeing enough people. I read something in the gym today. It said about working out, and I'm going to attach this to prospecting. Prospect insane or stay the same. And so why is it so difficult for people to get themselves to do that? Well, look at it. The activity of prospecting is linked to pain. Rejection is linked to pain. I once heard a speaker say that thank you for the no. Say thank you for the no's, because just tally up how many in-home consultations you need to have before you get a client that you can serve, and what's your average revenue from that client. Divide that by how many people you need to see to get the client, and that's how much every no is worth. Thank you for the no. So when you get your next no, thank you for the no, thank you for the no. I heard that and I said, give me a break. That does not work. Here's why. If you were to cut your finger, there's an area of the brain called the anterior cingulate that gets fired on, like mad, like crazy. If you get rejected or disapproved of, the same area of the brain gets fired on. The anterior cingulate doesn't differentiate between mental pain, imagined pain, or real physical pain. And so we can't use that strategy. Rejection can kill you. Now, let me ask you a question. Can I be confrontive with you? Yes? How many of you are saying no? All right. Here's my first confrontive question. Remember, at an hour and 18 minutes left in the program, we've got 39 minutes left. You said that you had an area in your life that you were committed to reach your goals, correct? Remember that? Nod your head up and down? Yes? All right. How many of you would agree that, first of all, you know what to do? That if you did it, you'd improve and reach your goals? How many of you agree, by raised hands, you know what to do? Can I see those hands? Health, business, or personal? How many of you would agree, my second confrontive question, that not only do you know what to do, but secondly, you are capable of doing it? Can I see those hands? Now, here's my third most confrontive question. How many of you would agree that not only do you know what to do, not only are you capable of doing it, but number three, that you're not doing all that you could be doing to be as successful as you could possibly be in your health, your business, and your personal life? Can I see those hands? I appreciate your honesty. I really do. I can just feel the love in the room. And it's not likely. I need to challenge this. You're not walking around in your life feeling inadequate about your performances. You're not walking around thinking, I'm just not doing all that I can be doing for my company, for my employees, for my clients. If you were walking around feeling inadequate about your performances, how would your self-image be, high or low? You'd have a low self-image. What mood would you be in with a low self-image? You'd be depressed. How many of you have ever been depressed before? I guess the real question is, how many of you are depressed now, right? There's nothing wrong with getting depressed. Elite performers get depressed, but they don't stay in depression very long. They get back on track into dollar-producing activities. Scientists have studied people who have been in depression for any prolonged period of time. Here's what they find. There's a decrease in the white blood cell count. What's going to happen to you if there's a decrease in your white blood cell count? You're going to get sick. Getting sick is a threat to your survival. Our brain is designed for survival, not prosperity. So when you and I are avoiding uncomfortable activities, we don't see that we're avoiding uncomfortable activities. Instead, what do we pay attention to? We see our priorities, our interruptions, our excuses, our stories. As human beings, we have very limited bandwidth of perceptual ability, very limited bandwidth. Our brain is genetically coded to take this limited bandwidth and default it to see our threats, to see what can hurt us, not to see our opportunities. Let me give you some examples of the limits of perception. Have you heard about this before? Dogs that have higher perceptual abilities well beyond human beings, particularly in hearing and in smelling. This dog, have you heard about this? This dog can detect cancer in a patient well beyond any medical diagnostic test. This dog can detect the cancer. And over here it talks about the breath, that this dog can detect these cancer signature molecules on the breath of patients before any medical diagnosis can. Have you heard about this cat that goes into a nursing home? And if the cat sits on a patient's bed and purrs, within hours that person dies. That this cat can sense death. Have you heard of that before? Have you heard of that? I read this in the scientific journal, People magazine. But anyway, I say, don't give me this about this cat having this extra perception. Look at that cat's eyes. Look at that cat's eyes. You know what's really happening here? That cat is killing people. That cat needs to be, put that cat in jail. That's what needs to happen. But let's talk about dogs. How many of you have dogs? By raise hands. What a unique relationship of species, humans and dogs. This is Sophie, the bad one, and that's Zorro. I think Sophie has a species identity crisis. I think Sophie thinks that she's a cat. Have you ever seen a dog that hangs out on the chair like that? You've seen that? I kept saying to Sophie, Sophie, you're a dog, you're a dog, you're a dog. Now there's something called mirror neurons. My daughter, who was about 4 at the time, came up to me one day. She says, Daddy, I'm not a daughter, I'm a doggy. Okay, how long have you been a doggy? What does she say? Since I was a puppy. This was not staged. There she is. I mean, look at this. And it gets worse. I don't know if she's a daughter or a dog. If I call her a dog when she's a daughter, I'm in trouble. But one night, I'm at home. I'm watching educational TV, Family Feud. I've got Sophie on the left side and Zorro on the right side. All of a sudden, Sophie starts to growl. I look at Sophie. I say, what's wrong with you? A few seconds later, the front doorbell rings. Sophie heard something well beyond the threshold of human perception. I looked at Zorro and I said, well, what's wrong with you? But anyway, we have very limited hearing. This chart shows how limited energy, vibrating energy, this limit of this small band of wavelengths of energy is visible to human beings. And Einstein would say that all mass is a form of energy. Einstein would say that your table is not a solid, that there's more space than there is matter. There's particles, protons, neutrons, electrons, in constant circular motion so fast that human limits of perception perceives it as a solid. Closest example I can give you is an airplane propeller that spins so fast it looks like a solid plane. And we can't see on the subatomic scale. Have you ever put your pen in your mouth just thinking? You ever done that before? You won't do it after this. Look at what's well beyond the human ability to perceive. We have limited perception. The head of a pin, there's nothing on the head of a pin. Until you magnify and show what's there well beyond human perception. Keep increasing the magnification and you keep increasing the reality of what's present in that pin, the head of the pin. And here we're going to come up on the most common cold virus, keep increasing all of this beyond human perceptual ability. If we don't see it, if we can't feel it, we don't believe it exists. It's not a part of our reality. And coming up is the most common cold virus right here, the rhinovirus. I've seen this up close. I've seen it really up close, closer than that. There it is, the rhinovirus. But that's where you started. You get the idea. Now, since we have such limited bandwidth of human perceptual ability, human genetic coding takes this and defaults it to see our threats. We are genetically coded to be victims and blame. We're genetically coded to be negative. Let me give you an example of this coding, of this selective perception. Has anybody bought a new car in here recently? Anybody? Nice and loud. What kind of a car did you buy? A Honda. Why? Okay, so either before or after, did you start to see a lot of the same kind of cars on the road? Did the number of those cars change? No, what changed was you had an experience that changed what you were in reference to, what you were paying attention to. I'll use myself as an example. If you're like me, and I know I am, this will apply. When I was coaching football, I thought I had life just great. I had a credit card. I was making money. I lived in an alleyway away from the ocean in Corona del Mar, California. Life was good. I bought my first Mercedes Honda Civic. After I bought that Honda, all I saw were Hondas everywhere. The number of Hondas didn't change. What changed was what I was paying attention to. My reference point is what changed. I had a rental property in Irvine, California. It was vacant during the summer. I decided to put air conditioning in the property and raise the rent. When I made that decision, what do you think I saw on almost every other page of the local newspaper? Ads for air conditioning. There's an ad. There's an ad. How do they know? The reality didn't change. The outside didn't change. What changed was my observation. I am what changed. What I was paying attention to is what changed. Do you think that it would be in your advantage to be able to influence what you pay attention to? Do you think that that would be important? Because right now, I'm going to wager a guess and ask you to consider that you're being dictated to by circumstances. You're being dictated to by past experiences. You're being dictated to by expectations and flawed beliefs. Just consider that as a possibility. Now, in your business, would you agree that there's going to be a lot of distractions, a lot of interruptions, and a lot of competing priorities? Nod your head like this if you would agree. Is it important for you to be able to be focused in the midst of a lot of chaos and distractions? Would that be correct to say that? So what I want to do is I want to give you a test. I'm going to show you a video that's going to have a lot of distractions. Now, this has made its way through the internet quite a bit, so if you've seen it already, still participate silently with the video. And what I'm going to ask you to do, there's two teams of three. One's wearing white shirts, one's wearing black shirts. This was done by Don Simmons and his team at Cornell University. And it's about handling distractions. They're moving around, they're passing a basketball, and what I want you to do is count how many passes the white shirt team makes. A bounce is not a pass, but a bounce pass does count as a pass. It's a 30-second video, and for some reason, there's a difference between men and women in counting the passes, the accuracy. So here we go. Count the passes the white shirt team makes. Let's see how you can call on yourself to be focused in the midst of a lot of distractions. Here's the video. And that last pass, count that pass. All right, so men only, nice and loud, how many passes? Women only, how many passes? Okay, well, that's not what's important. What's important is, did anybody see anything unusual? Did anybody see a gorilla walk to the center, stop, beat its chest, and walk off? Look around, raise a hand if you saw the gorilla. Raise a hand nice and high if you saw the gorilla. All right, now watch this. How many of you are saying, what in the world are you talking about? What gorilla? There was no gorilla. Raise your hand nice and high if you have no idea of what I'm talking about now. I'm glad that there were people in the room who saw the gorilla, because you can verify I'm going to play the same video. Watch the video again this time. But this time, don't count any passes. Just tell me when you see the gorilla. Here we go. Watch it again. Same video. Start to look off to your right. There it is, in clear view, not blocked. Now, we're gonna talk. I'm gonna show you this afternoon's program. I'm gonna show you a concept called attention neurons, so you understand what happened. But I'll let you talk about this during the break about what it meant if you did see it or if you didn't see it. But to me, it's that we get so bogged down with our distractions, our interruptions, our priorities, that we just don't have the ability to run ourselves and focus. And so anyway, this will definitely help you to do so, the one takeaway that I have for you. Now, so selective perception. When you and I are avoiding uncomfortable activities, do you realize why we're avoiding? We're avoiding because we should be avoiding. We're avoiding because that's genetic coding, because our brain has linked this activity to danger. That's what we should be doing. It's not your fault. That's what you should be doing. But it is your responsibility to implement a solution to this. And so the brain tags it, we avoid. When we avoid, we don't look at opportunities to take the action. Instead, we go into selective perception. What we see our obstacles, our excuses, our stories, our priorities, our interruptions. There's a word that describes this process. Would you write this in the blank? I believe it's Roman number 2. The word is rationalization. Right above that model, write in the word rationalization. Rationalization is your biggest competitor to success and achievement. Rationalization is what you mean when you say, I am my biggest competitor. What is rationalization? Rationalization is internal dialogue. How many of you, by raise of hands, have internal dialogue? Let me see the hands. Those who not raise your hand are saying, I don't talk to myself. That's it. That's internal dialogue. And it almost always ends in the phrase, you're going to die. So I want to give you a metaphor. Remember the first movie, Alien? The astronaut on the spaceship looks up for his cat. The alien creature reaches down, grabs him by the face, pulls him in, and kills him. This is my metaphor for this rationalization, this internal dialogue that ends in you're going to die. So watch this. Thank you. Watch this. I say I'm getting up at 3:50 in the morning. I'm motivated to do it. I want to do it. I set the alarm for 3:50. The alarm rings. The alien is asleep on the couch in my bedroom. Alien wakes up, sees what time it is, freaks out, jumps on my face, and starts this conversation. Are you crazy? Do you know what time it is? Look, it's 3:50 a.m. You can't keep pushing yourself like this, Bob. You're going to depress your immune system. You're going to get sick. You're going to die. You're speaking all over the country. Sleep in for America. This is what I get. All I wanted to do is get up and go to the gym, and I get a barrage. I get assaulted. I get hijacked by human instincts again. And I want you to experience this. Are you ready for our second test? Or I guess third test, if you count the gorilla as another one. All I need for you to experience this is to put you in a circumstance where your brain searches, like a computer, and finds a link to pain or discomfort. You ready to experience this? How many of you are saying, All right, here we go. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. When I say, ready, set, go, I'm going to ask you to scream as loud as you possibly can, like your life depended on you being as loud as you possibly can, 4 words. The words are, fear is a lie. So when I say ready, set, go, I'm going to ask you to scream as loud as you can, like your life depended on it. Fear is a lie. Notice your internal dialogue. How many of you are saying, not going to do it? Not going to do it. How many of you are saying, well, I'll say it loud enough that he doesn't bother me, but I'm not going to be screaming? How many of you are saying, well, I was out of the room. Maybe he's got to deal with the rest of the room. I'll be the only one screaming. Not going to do it. All right, the words are, fear is a lie. Would you take your right hand? Now, here's the first challenge. Some of you will not be able to get yourself to do this. Let's see how you do. Take your right hand, open it up, take a look at it. Now, take it and put a grip right on your face. Get a grip right on your face. You see, I told you, some of you are not going to be able to do this. The alien is going to say, this is stupid. You're not doing it. So go ahead and get a grip right there. Take your left hand, grab your wrist. When you pull it off, it's going to make a popping sound. It's going to try to get right back on, but keep it off. Ready? Pull it off now. You feel it squirming, trying to get right back on? You might want to name it when you get home. But I want you to talk to it. Here's what I want you to say. Look at it. Thank you for caring. Go ahead. Thank you for caring. But not for sharing. You might have to go every 5 seconds taking the alien off to get yourself to take the actions. Now, the words are, fear is a lie, as loud as you can, like your life depends on it. Here we go. Ready, set, go. Well, let me ask you. I will ask you to consider that you held back and that it was 100% in the room. Everybody held back. If somebody didn't hold back, they would still be standing up. They would still be screaming until they ran out of breath. What caused you to hold back? It's that very same dynamic that's in the way that's separating you from reaching the goals that you want to reach, that in many cases what we do is resign to and believe we're doing the best that we can. It's the same dynamic. Your brain has what's called neural networks. Your brain has a schemata, and it went to a previous time where you were embarrassed, and your brain remembered the feeling of what it felt like to be embarrassed, and your brain said that's life-threatening. It must never occur again. You didn't know that this was happening. All you knew, all it showed up in your life was you just kind of shout it out, but you weren't playing all out. So here's my question. Where else in your life are you holding back? No judgment, not good or bad. And here's another way to ask that. From whom are you withholding from? And there's only one reason that there's holding back, and that's fear. And so who's in control of the choices that you make in your life? Who's in control of the decisions that you make? Who do you think controls your choices? Who do you think? We've got a lot of Z's in the audience, franchise owners, right? Who do you think controls the choices you make? Do you think you are in control? What do you really control? The volume on your radio? Temperature of your car? What comes after this? Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out? How do you know that? Let me say it a different way. Why do you know that? Do you realize what just happened? Without your permission, here's what happened. You have a neuron. Our brain is forming neurological connections on a moment-by-moment basis. There was a stimulus. The stimulus was, who let the dogs out? You have a physical neuron that was tagged, that had an electrical impulse when I said, who let the dogs out? Which means you have a physical reality, and there was a connecting response that had the response that there was 5 barks that follow that, and these axons, they extended out. Here, remember the areas of the brain, you had an extension. The brain constantly forms interconnected extensions throughout the brain, hippocampus for memory and cerebellum for automatic tasks, and you had a response into the limbic area of the brain, which means that not only did you know that it was 5 barks, but you also had an emotion. It was probably a positive emotion because of a sporting event. I just described the formation of habits. I've also just described what's called brain plasticity. It used to be thought that up about to the age of 24, that you couldn't grow new neurons. It was all downhill from there. But brain plasticity now has discovered that you can continue to grow new neurons based on experience, based on lifetime learning for a lifetime. Yes, Alzheimer's can be put off through constant education, constant learning. And so this is a habit. This is how a habit is formed. I mentioned earlier, you have far more capacity to create the circumstances and the result and events in your life than you are aware of. And you can create new habits. You can go into areas where you don't think you can ever achieve, and I'm going to share some examples with you. So, rationalization is the competitor. Human genetic coding is a competitor. I'm going to give you one last chance to take this alien off and to act as though alien doesn't want you to act. And I'm going to play a song. You can stand up in the aisles, you can sing, you can dance, you can shake, stand in your chair, or just sit back and relax. The alien thinks it must protect you. If you take it off, you're going to do something dangerous to your life, to your survival. It must shake itself off and get right back on. Of course, that's not true. Here's your next chance to compete against the alien. The alien song. Here we go. Nice and loud.
At first I was afraid, I was petrified. Kept thinking I could never live without you by my side. But then I spent so many nights thinking how you did me wrong. And I grew strong, and I learned how to get along. And so you're back from outer space. I just walked in to find you here with that sad look upon your face. Weren't you the one who tried to hurt me with the vibe? You think I crumbled? You think I lay down and die? Oh no, not I will survive.
So, that's the image. That's the image that you want. Take that alien off, throw it down, take the action, take it off, throw it down, take the action, reach your goals. Now, let me give you some notes. Top of page 3. The purpose of rationalization is to protect me. So, blinders on. You want to improve. You want to make this day significant for you. You have a goal, you know what you need to do, you intend to do it. Your brain searches, finds it's linked to dangerous activity. You're compelled to avoid. You justify the avoidance with rationalization. That's how it works. Rationalization is a justification of avoidance. You don't know that this is happening. Because of the limits of human perception, you think that you're doing the best that you can be doing. It's just the way that it is. Now, what I'm about to put on the screen, it's so powerful, it's what answers the question to what motivates you or what controls you. Now, before I give you this, are there any psychics in the room? Not psychotics, psychics. This is my remote control. I'm going to hold it up above my eye level, and I'm going to let go of my grip on this. What do you predict is going to happen? Now, you're making a prediction of something in the future, but you're not a psychic. How can you do that? You must be relying on some type of a principle. Are you relying on a principle? Gravity. What if you don't believe in gravity? What if you think that gravity is a NASA hoax, put on the population to control the masses, and we didn't go to the moon, we don't have a Mars rover? Does your belief in the principle matter? Go from the top of this building and walk across to the hotel and see if gravity prevails. Don't believe in gravity and see what happens. I can test it, I let go, and it falls. We can't see it. It's a force that we can't see, but we know it exists, and we can see the evidence of this force existing. So that's what this gravity doesn't ask us to understand it or believe it or participate with it. It's a universal principle that affects us. What I'm about to put on the screen is just like that. It doesn't ask you to agree or believe or participate or understand. What I'm about to put on the screen is the answer to what motivates all human beings. Here it is. All human performance is the avoidance of pain or the seeking of comfort. Now, the best way for me to describe this to you is talking about my personal circumstance. It's not about me as the speaker. That's not what's important. What's important is, how does what I'm about to say affect you? I have a couple things going on. First of all, I have ADHD. How many of you are familiar with ADHD, have some type of relationship with it in your family, yourself, or know somebody like that? I wear this label with pride. Over 80% of entrepreneurs in the Silicon Valley are diagnosed with ADHD. ADHDers are movers, they're shakers, they get things done. If you have a child that has ADHD, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I also have bulimia. How many are familiar with bulimia? And I don't wear that label with pride. At least I don't have lysdixia, so that's good. By the way, your subconscious mind is cracking up because that was really funny. Mixed up the letters. Anyway, the way that I deal with my ADHD is with structure and routine. So I wake up at 3:50, I go to the gym. I have a parking space. That's my car. That's my space. If somebody's in my space, that's an interruption to my routine. I'm going to get pretty aggravated about that. I'm going to find out who they are. I'm going to get in before them because they're in my space. This is my locker. I work out at LA Fitness. They're open lockers. That's my locker right there. You can put a lock. Here's a lock. You can put a lock any place. If somebody's in my locker, this is so much of an interruption. Somebody's in my locker. I'm going to find out who they are. I'm definitely getting in. Oh, it's really great that there's a guy that gets in about 20 minutes after me, and I'm always in his locker. This is fabulous. And that right there, that's my elliptical. There was that woman right next to me was on my elliptical, but I explained to her that this is my elliptical, and she was kind enough to move over. I was on the road once, and I was working out in a gym I've never been to before. There was an entire line of ellipticals empty except the one that I was on, and a couple, husband and wife, comes out. The husband gets on one side of me, the wife gets on the other side of me, and I knew I had her elliptical. I was on her machine. And so I asked her, am I on your machine? She said, yes, I had surgery. It works I put my earplugs back in, my earphones. Anyway, because I wasn't moving in the middle of my workout. That's the lane that I swim. Can you imagine? I walk in, there's somebody in my lane. There's somebody sitting right there. That's where I sit in the hot tub. That's my shower. And when I go to breakfast, I say it's going to be the greatest day ever, or the best it could be is a good day. What's the criteria? I look through the window. That's my booth right there, sitting that direction. If somebody's in my booth, oh my God, that's probably the worst of all. The worst of all. I was on the road. I read the newspaper every day. I had 7 newspapers on the road for a week. Guess what happens? Somebody's in my booth. So I go to my backup booth. I have a backup. I'm not obsessed about this. So I spread everything out. They get up and move. What did I do? I gathered everything up, and as I'm going over to my booth, I'm saying, this is not OCD. It should be CDO. Anyway, the light is better over here. Now, when I'm on the road, I don't have my routine. I'm out of my routine, and I was having difficulty, and I'm going to explain this to you as if it was recent, but this happened about 30 years ago. Take this journey with me. I go to Los Angeles International Airport. I've got a program in Newark. Well, I'm flying into the Newark airport. Long flight. All I had to eat is what they serve you on the airplane. Can we talk about this for a second? They gave me a box of raisins this big, this big. I looked at the flight attendant. I said, all these for me? Do I need to share this with anyone? They gave me a bagel this big. I thought people are going to think I'm exaggerating, so I took a picture of it. I kept it. That's it. That's what I had. That's what, cross country. This is what I wanted. I didn't get that, right? So, all human performance, instincts trump intentions. All human performance is the avoidance of pain, the highest level perceived pain, and the seeking of comfort. I get into the hotel room. What do I pay attention to? What's the highest level of pain? Highest level of pain is my hunger. What's the solution? It's the minibar. I walk over to the minibar. The first thing I do, I open it up. The first thing I see is a bag of M&Ms. I turn it over. I want to see how many calories in the bag of M&Ms. This is when I was still thought that weight management was math. It's not, but I was still counting calories 30 years ago. And it says 240 calories. But that's not what's important. What's important is how many servings in the bag. If it's 2 servings, I have to multiply 2 times 240. Look at this. That says 1 pack is 1 serving. And 1 pack. So I take out my calorie counter. Any goal worthwhile has measurement. If you can't measure, you can't manage. I'll give this to you fast, and at my booth at the break, I'll give it to you slower. Your body weight times 10 is how many calories you can have on a daily basis. You're not going to lose weight or gain weight. 3,500 calories in a pound divided by 7 days is 500 from that first number. You'll lose 1 pound a week. I'm sitting at 1,000 calories. I can have that bag of M&Ms. And there was so much love in that bag of M&Ms. And then I get on my knees for a more, do I want to show you the agony of getting up? I will, okay, for you. So I get on my knees for a more efficient reach ratio. Next thing I see are chocolate chip cookies. I would never give myself chocolate chip cookies. I rip that open. Now I want you to visualize a shark in a feeding frenzy. I am a maniac. I am obsessed. And I hit this. I hope you can still hear me. Can you hear me in the back? I am an obsessed maniac. Oreo cookies. I ripped that open. Right over here, there's a bag of barbecue flavored potato chips. I ripped that one slow motion, almost got away, caught it midair. Right behind there is regular flavored potato chips. I ripped that open. Over here's a box of Cracker Jacks. I wonder what the prize is. Here's a jar of peanuts. I just happened to glance at how many calories in the jar. There's 1,500 calories in the jar. I ate the entire jar. Now I see these candy bars. My intention is to eat just one. Then it changes to eat one at a time, and then it changes to eat them all as fast as I possibly can. Now I have one of nature's principles called inertia. Anybody in motion will remain in motion unless acted on by an external force. This almost destroyed my momentum. It's one of these Rice Krispies and marshmallows in a square in saran wrap. I couldn't get the wrap off fast enough. I took a bite and I hated it. It was terrible. It was horrible, but I ate it all. I ate it all. I ate everything in a mini bar, everything. Then I had a Diet Coke. Then I had a moment. I had a moment that was unlike any moment I had before. I looked at this and I said, bulimia. I thought I had overcome bulimia. I just binged on over 5,000 calories. And my previous experience with bulimia was I would binge and then go work out for 4 hours. That was my purge. And I looked at this and I said, okay, my entire life is avoiding pain and seeking comfort. I said for the first time, this is the first time I didn't go victim and blame my marketplace, blame other people, blame circumstances. I said, it's me. I'm a fraud. 30 years ago, I was going around teaching success principles and I wasn't successful. I was 40 pounds overweight. I wasn't in a relationship. Nobody would have me. I said, it's me. For the first time, I surrendered. Tough love question for you is, where in your life are you a fraud? If you're saying something's important to you and you're not in action, that's being fraudulent. No judgment, not good or bad. And so here's what my scenario was. As a football coach at Cal State Fullerton, this was the athletic ability of our team, and this was the athletic ability of everyone else on our schedule. How are you going to win when everybody's better than you are? Only way you're going to win is by teaching the athletes to have peak performance moments, to tap into the highest level of their God-given talent and ability, and to catch your opponents when they don't. Now we can win. And so I researched a program for this, and I brought it to Cal State Fullerton. We won 2 conference championships. We were predicted to finish last both years that we won the conference. We were so disrespected, Arizona newspaper said the Wildcats welcome Cal State Disneyland, they called us. And so, that's how I got into speaking. But what I realized was I had taught a group, I had taught somebody else how to tap into peak performance. I hadn't mastered it for myself. I need more research. So I continued to do more research, and then I came across this dynamic. My next trip, I told 5 people, if I go into minibar in this trip, I'll give you $250. $250, $250, $250, $250. Now, I go across country. I am starving. All I had to eat is what they give you on the airplane. I get into my hotel room. What's the highest level perceived pain? It's the hunger. Our brain is genetically coded to recognize the highest level perceived pain. I have severe arthritis in my shoulder. Guess what hasn't hurt me in weeks? My knees. I don't feel my knees. My knees feel fabulous. My shoulder hurts like hell. Anyway, and so when I go over to the minibar, so the highest level perceived pain is my hunger. When I go over to the minibar, guess what happens? The brain continues to do what its instincts tell it to do. Make sure I'm recognizing and avoiding the highest level perceived pain. When I go to the minibar, there's a higher level pain, the 5 times $250, and I step away from the minibar. And it was easy. I went from believing that I couldn't do this to having it be a non-issue. I thought that the truth was that I could never weigh less than 200 pounds. For skydiving, I'm a skydiver, it's a fall rate issue. And at 205 pounds, I can't match the base that's all grouped together. I have to go low, it's called. At 200 pounds, I can get right in there. So I white-knuckled myself. I dieted and deprived myself. I used willpower to get down to 200 pounds, and then I did research on a food plan. And I thought that 200 pounds was the best I could ever be. My last weigh-in was 177. If you would have told me that I would weigh less than 180, I wouldn't have thought that was possible. I haven't weighed 177. I weighed more than that in high school. That's an example of going through something that you accept as being true and believe it as being true because it's in relationship to your past experiences. Think of the concave convex. All the evidence supports the beliefs that you currently have. And I'm asking you to challenge it. Here's the formula. Specific declaration plus accountability. This is called behavioral contracting. This is the one takeaway that I have for you. Remember that instincts trump intention. So if I blow air puff into your eyes, what will your eyelids do? What will they do? They're going to blink. This time I want you to intend not to blink. So the intention is you're not going to blink. I puff air into your eyes, what will your eyelids do? They're going to blink. Instincts trump intentions. It wasn't that all of a sudden I was committed to my weight management. That's not what happened. I leveraged human nature. We can't compete with avoiding pain and seeking comfort. We can't win that battle. We've got to tap into it. Remember I said, I don't need to give you something new. I need to give you access to what you already have. You already have this incredible, overwhelming power to recognize danger and to avoid at all cost. All of us already have that instinctual ability. What if we tapped into it? How do you tap into it? With a behavioral contract. Here's the elite performance formula. Specific commitment plus accountability. Accountability equals 2 parts. You heard Alan talk about integrity, and he mentioned accountability. What's integrity? Integrity is do what you say you will do. Accountability, the check-in, somebody outside of you checks in with you. Did you do what you said you would do? And then, here's the controversial part, a consequence if you don't. I wager to say that you haven't had a conversation like this where somebody says they're going to do something and you say, and what's the consequence if you don't do this? Most of the time, nobody ever has that kind of a conversation. It's the carrot versus the stick. The carrot does have a place in human performance, but the carrot will not rewire the brain and form new habits. It's the stick. We have 3 minutes left. Here's the application. Now, remember the challenge to go from entertainment into impact? This has been entertaining, hasn't it? Don't you just love me? Go into impact by making a contract. You have a place to do this on page 3, I believe. The due date, 7 days at a time. And so since you're getting this on Wednesday, let's go to Sunday. Stay within the 7-day period of time. So that makes it 5 days. What is your commitment? What is the activity? And then what is the consequence if you don't perform? Now your brain is tapping into the highest motivational genetic coding possible, the avoidance of the highest level perceived pain. You will be compelled to avoid that consequence. How do you avoid the consequence? By taking the action. You're using the stick, behavior contracting. There's never an excuse for not having someone to hold you accountable. I will hold you accountable plus $100 if you don't do what you said you would do. Send me an email. info@BobDavies.com. Send me an email, and I'll also give you that square analogy as well. The highest level of pain, if the highest level of pain is the consequence for non-performance versus the pain of the action, you're always going to be avoiding the highest level of pain. You will avoid the highest level. So if the highest level of pain is the consequence for not performing, how do I avoid it? By taking the action. And so 2 things I want to talk about. One is to have ongoing contact with myself. One option is look at the very last page, page 20. So reference this visually. I'm going to be fast on this. You can hire me as your coach. $6,000 is a discounted package for 4 months. That's a good deal. I have a group coaching program that's 36 modules, 18 months of spaced learning, and that's a one-time payment of $297. Then I have a group live coaching program, and it's a teleconference bi-weekly. Also includes my food management program, and it includes the information in the one-time payment program as well. And this is a monthly $307. Take this. Take your first 5 feet of height. Give yourself 100 pounds. Each inch taller than 5 feet, women give yourself 5 pounds, men give yourself 7 pounds. And if you're not at that number, come see me at my booth, get into this program, and by next year's conference, you'll be half the person you are now. I promise you, it's very exciting. My last concept is this, the 1.2% factor. You see that behind me? A study done with chimpanzees, DNA genetic coding, shows that there's only a 1.2% difference. Turn it around. 98.8% alike between a human being's DNA and a chimp's DNA. Small difference, significant results. Look at the difference between a human and a chimp. Put this into a baseball analogy. The average baseball player hits .250, which is 3 hits every 12 time at bat, makes about $1 million. The superstar hits .333. That's pretty significant, isn't it? How did he get there? 1 more hit every 12 times at bat makes $24 million. Is the superstar significantly better than the average? No. The superstar is a little bit better. And so if you do, like Alan said this morning, if you do one thing this week in a behavior contract that you wouldn't have ordinarily done, the law of accumulative effect takes impact, and your year will be significantly different. I'll be here. I'll have a breakout session afterwards. I'll be at my booth during your break here. I want to thank you so much for being a part of this. I hope this helps. Thank you so much. We'll see you over there. Thank you.